Welcome back to the show. We got a great one lined up. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You could follow us on X, YouTube, and digperspectives.com for exclusive content, and open up your free account at Caleb and Brown at xrpwealth589.com, or click the link underneath this video or any video to open up your free account and start getting the best night's sleep you've ever had in your life. Let's take a look at the numbers right quickly here. $3.37 trillion market cap for crypto, and the market is off 3.3%. Bitcoin now 103,000 plus, Ethereum 2,400 plus, XRP's $2.32. We're off 3.2 on the 24. We're off 9.7 on the 7-day. But today is a very, very important day, ladies and gentlemen, ranging between $2.28 and $2.44. We could see stablecoin legislation passed today. We'll give you the details in just a moment. I do want to let you know, 10 days away till XRPLasVegas.com. Go get your tickets to the largest XRP conference in the world. I am so super excited, ladies and gentlemen. Don't mess around. Get your tickets before they're gone.
Hi, I'm Bree Teresi. I'm a model and a crypto enthusiast. The excitement is building. XRP Las Vegas 2025 is almost here. Learn more about the evolution of finance and Web3 from top industry leaders. I have my ticket. Do you have yours?
Now's the time to get your ticket at xrplasvegas.com and check out the conference agenda. Also, builders and developers will have a shot at $25,000 in prize money with the best Web3 project ideas in a Shark Tank-like pitch.
Let's go, XRP community. Lock in.
Yes, lock in and get your ticket. I want to meet each and every one of you. Let's start right here. Uh-oh. Class action lawsuit filed against Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy, alleging misleading statements about its Bitcoin strategy. Uh-oh. You know, we'll see what comes of all of this, but it sounds like a house of cards going over there at some point. Maybe it takes 2 years, 10 months, 10 weeks, 10 years. I don't know, but it doesn't sound solid. Neither does this, but I think we can explain this one. Moodys, I think we could explain the other one too, but I don't think people will like it. But Moodys downgraded the United States credit rating on Friday, and Wall Street is now bracing for the fallout. Listen, this is all of the, look, Moody's is a lagging indicator, and obviously it's bringing that rating down because the tariffs in the first 100 days of the president's term. But the reality is that all of this is going to flip very quickly because, again, it's a lagging indicator, right? But we'll see what's going on because there's a lot happening, and we're going to get to it all. Meanwhile, there's one big, beautiful bill which includes no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and it just officially passed the House Budget Committee. This is an epic victory for America. And again, look at the massive play that's happening here from this administration and the president. Because you had the Dems stonewalling the stablecoin vote when it went on the floor for cloture vote, and they stonewalled that, even though they had shaped the legislation in committee and passed it out of legislation, out of the Senate. So what's interesting is I said this, and I said, well, this is where you know it's political posturing because they're planning on passing it today. And why? Because what are you going to do? Say no to the stablecoin bill and then watch this big, beautiful bill go through? You're going to try to stop that too? There's midterms coming, and everyone in the political realm knows exactly what I'm talking about. You want to win at midterms? You better not be the reason that none of this stuff passes, giving Americans what they want. You see, the left side of the aisle has gotten themselves in a bit of a quandary because now they're holding on to the 20% of issues that America actually cares about, or maybe even 10% of the issues that America cares about, or less. The majority of Americans want the things that we've been talking about. And if you don't give it to us, you're not going to get elected back in. That's how that's going to happen. So the weight and the pressure is on the left. And that means we got to have the stablecoin legislation, which, by the way, is headed for vote on the Senate floor tonight for the second time at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. We are just hours away from getting the first ever large piece of crypto legislation needed to unlock the innovation and the money to use this technology in traditional finance. Here is Senator Haggerty, who introduced the Genius Act. You're going to love what he's got to say.
So the issue, as far as I have always understood the stablecoin issue, is what is backing this stuff, and how much of it's backed by actual treasuries versus cash versus equities or something else. What does this say about all of that?
It's not going to be equities. It's going to be high-quality, short-term assets, either short-term short-term U.S. Treasuries or cash. I think the majority of it will be U.S. Treasuries. In fact, what this will do, and the projections are by 2030, this is according to Citibank, stablecoin issuers will be the largest holders of U.S. Treasuries in the world.
Who has been fighting this?
Well, the people that like centralized currencies. This is a decentralized concept.
Right.
You know, you register with the various.
No, but I'm so interested in terms of who was trying to get meetings with you for the last year to say, please, this is a terrible idea.
No one in the industry is doing that.
Of course not.
It has to do with my colleagues, and basically, it's gotten to be a question, and we'll find out tonight. We have broad policy agreement, Democrats and Republicans. The question is, can we get past the partisan politics and allow us to actually have a victory? I would enjoy having a bipartisan victory.
So there's nobody in the industry who's saying this is a bad idea?
No.
So the only people who are saying it's a bad idea to you thus far are, you're saying, just other politicians? For what reason, though?
Politicians that
They're people like you, Andrew.
want to see centralized control.
Right.
And, you know, a centralized control, if you want that, buy the digital yuan. I don't want to see that happen here in America. I think it would be devastating for the dollar's value as the reserve currency. This will actually perpetuate the dollar's value as reserve currency. It will extend that momentum. It's going to extend demand for U.S. Treasuries. There's a lot to like about this.
There sure is. And by the way, let's take a look at this. U.S. 30-year Treasury yield reaches 5.02%, the highest since 2023. Listen, there's a lot happening because at the same time, China dumps $18.9 billion in treasuries as the U.S. government faces major dilemma, according to macro analyst Luke Groman. Well, I don't think it's the dilemma that people think it is, because they're getting ready to pass the stablecoin bill. And that is going to help with all of this. And that is the whole point, that we don't have to have adversaries holding our U.S. treasuries to support the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. No. No, we're changing. We're changing to the private issuance of stable coins, and that new use case will soak up these bonds. And you could tell all these countries that think they're holding us over a barrel, go fly a kite. Go ahead and sell your treasuries, because we're about to find a whole new use case for all these treasuries. And guess what else? We don't need the petrodollar agreement anymore either. That is where this is going. That is what digital assets have been all about at my house. U.S. has reportedly struck a deal with China following discussions involving Scott Bessent. The golden age is upon us. You better believe it is. And regardless of that $18.9 billion treasuries being dumped by China, I think it was all a part of the trade plan.
Jake, I think what we're going to see, just like we saw with the UK trade deal, my sense is it's what we'll see with China. We don't want to decouple with China. And President Trump actually wants to open up China for business. So the manufacturing we want to bring back, we had during COVID, we realized that we had some very strategic shortfalls, whether it was medicines, semiconductors, steel, the other products. So the medium-term goal is to bring back these strategic industries as quickly as possible. And I think we will continue trading with China in the kinds of products that these small businesses are talking about at lower tariff levels. Jake, I think what we're going to see,
there you have it,
just
right
like
there.
we saw with the
So this is all about reshaping the deal. That's what this is. And I happen to think that $18.9 billion dumping of treasuries is all a part of reshaping this deal. Let's listen to this clip.
There is the potential growth of the debt, but what's more important is that we grow the economy faster. So what we've seen under the past 4 years, and what we inherited I inherited 6.7% deficit to GDP, which was the highest deficit when we were not at war, not in a recession. So we've been trying to bring down the spending, and we are going to grow the revenue side. So we are going to grow the GDP faster than the debt grows, and that will stabilize the debt to GDP, which even Secretary Yellen and I agree is the most important number.
Absolutely. You got to get these numbers flipped so we're not putting on more debt faster than the country's growing, right? That's the bottom line. Here's Pippa Malmgren, right? Who her father was the economic advisor rather for Richard Nixon, President Nixon, when they dropped and came off the gold standard. And listen what she had to say just a couple years ago.
What underpins a world order is always the financial system. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new accounting is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The U.S. is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well.
This is where we're going. This is where the world is preparing for. And today is the very day that we're liable to see the mechanism voted on and passed in the Senate that will allow the U.S. dollar to be dominant for the next 150 years by passing the Genius Act. This is not a joke. Neutral reserve assets. Take a listen.
But this accelerates that in many cases. So I think that we are seeing a return toward neutral reserve assets as a significant holding of central bank assets. So basically, in a world where the biggest bond markets are prone to persistent debasement with lower interest rates, and in a world where they can be confiscated, gold in the central bank's own self-custody is attractive as a sovereign asset. Around the margins, Bitcoin's interesting. It's only a $2 trillion asset, so it's like a tenth of the size of the gold market. It's more volatile. It's only 16 years old, but among some smaller countries, Bhutan, El Salvador, it's interesting to them. It's also a trading mechanism for countries that are sanctioned. It's an open source settlement mechanism that they can turn to, and so I do think we're seeing a upshift in the appreciation of neutral reserve assets. Which, going back to that Stephen Myron paper, he called that out. He said basically, if we make the Treasury less attractive as a reserve holding to make the dollar less overvalued, then it's this could benefit some other currencies, but it'll probably primarily benefit neutral reserve assets. And he mentions gold and cryptocurrencies, with Bitcoin being by far the dominant one. And so I think that's the world we're going in, a more multipolar world that is then tied together with some of these neutral reserve assets.
Yeah, neutral reserve assets like XRP, right? Keep listening.
I think we need another Bretton Woods, or at least we need to be thinking in terms of a neutral reference point, a global unit of account. I mean, something like a gold standard even, updated to reflect a digital world and fast-moving financial flows.
Hi, my name is Bradley Kimes from Investment Perspectives and Cryptonair's documentary. I wanted to ask a question about globalization. If you could talk about the idea of the old concept of the banker coin and a neutral asset being in place of a global reserve status of the dollar, and possibly that being XRP.
What you're asking for is whether there's a possibility of a global currency. And to some extent, that's what Libra was trying to do. And as I understand it, that's different from what XRP is trying to do. And the reason is as follows. As soon as you go to maintaining the value, right, some kind of stable coin, a whole set of regulatory concerns get triggered. I have to make sure that there is corresponding financial or real assets backing this notional value that they seek to maintain. That looks a lot more like a bank. right? Because you're promising some claims which are fixed, and that requires regulation for reasons I just talked about.
Yeah, so our view is that these digital assets really become supplemental to the existing family of currencies, right? So every country still needs its own, fiat currency for all kinds of reasons that I won't get into. It's very complicated, right? And I actually think that the big four, the yen, the euro, the dollar, the RMB, they actually, I think, come stronger in this world that we're going into, partially because of digital assets. Okay. That these digital assets actually contribute to a world that's more interoperable, where more people around the globe can get access to these big four. And most of global commerce is done in the big four. So I think you have a bifurcation going on. Those big four get stronger. I think some of the smaller currencies, maybe even more of the very small fiat currencies, become less relevant, maybe even disappear. A country could have its own fiat, but still use one of the big four.
Like Montenegro, right?
Absolutely. But I think then where the digital assets fit in, like things like XRP and Bitcoin, they're kind of in that mid-range. They become, I think, like the Singapore dollar or the Swiss franc, and they become useful in, kind of lubricating the world to make it easier for those big four to get in the hands of people all around the world. So that's useful. And there might also be things like applications and devices that maybe primarily use one of those digital assets. So that's kind of the view we have. So I think in that world, countries should be less threatened by what's going on.
No doubt about it. But the reality is that we have a United States Treasurer saying this.
That we are going to have some kind of a grand global economic reordering, to have some kind of a grand global economic reordering. There's something on the equivalent of a new Bretton Woods.
This is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. And today is the day that it begins with passing the Genius Act in the Senate to make sure that the dominance of the U.S. dollar remains for the next 150 years plus. Make no mistake about it. That's what's happening here today. That's what the inception of digital assets is all about, and it's starting today. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. This is getting real, real good. I'll catch all of you on the next one.